All right. Hey, everybody. I am real excited to have Gil here tonight. I want to start off by showing you guys something very important. Can everyone see this? This is the first piece of graphic design I ever made in my life. And Gil, do you remember this?
Sort of. Yeah, I think I do, but it's
So
been many years.
yeah, so I made this back in 1991 at Kinko's on a Xerox machine. And the reason I made it is it was a competition at the advertising club at the College of Charleston to win a paid internship with Gil Shuler. And at the time, I didn't really know what graphic design was. I didn't know who Gil Shuler was. I did know that I was mowing lawns to make money and that a $1,500 internship sounded really awesome. So I applied. I actually won, and I went and worked with Gil. And what I did not know is that, and this sounds kind of cheesy, but really that 8 weeks working with Gil kind of changed my life because it really introduced me to what graphic design is and was. And when I walked into Gil's studio, I had never been in a space like that. It was just so creative, and the stuff he was doing was super interesting. And he was drawing, and he was working on a computer, and he had this giant cutting table in the middle of his whole space, and there were posters and books and music blasting. And I was just thinking, if this is what I can do for a living, this is what I want to do. And I don't know if Gil remembers this either, but the very first day I was in there, he said, "Well, do you know how to use the computer?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "Do you know anything about design?" And I was like, "Nope." And he said, "Well, can you cut some mat boards for me?" And I proceeded to slice my finger open on the very first cut.
That.
And it was bleeding everywhere. And Gil just said, "Why don't you just answer the phone today and just kind of hang out?" And he gave me a stack of communication arts annuals and said, "Hey, while you're answering the phone, just flip through these." And he just kind of really started to gradually show me what good design was. And also, I got to see his process and how he worked. And he let me go to meetings and sit in with clients. And I just learned so much being a sponge with him. And in terms of Gil, his reputation is it's world class. And if you look at his work and his body of work, he's been in print, he's been in communication arts, he's been in graphics, he's won. Even back in 1990, his whole shelves were just covered with Addy awards. And he's judged communication arts and print design annual competitions and stuff. So Gil's been around. If any of you have been to Charleston, I guarantee you have seen his work. There's a chance you might be wearing his work right now. So you need to go to gsgd.com and flip through his website. And then I also want to mention two more things before we get Gil talking here. One, he has a new book out called Barn Jam. Gil, do you want to hold that up?
Yes, I do.
Woo-hoo.
It's for sale.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's all poster.
Yeah, we'll talk more about it. He's going to talk about that some. And then I also want to tell you that Gil has probably been to more live music events and knows more about music than all of us combined. So if anybody needs good music suggestions or wants to know about a concert venue or a band, Gil is your guy. So anyway, I consider Gil to be my personal Yoda. He doesn't really know that, but I look at him as my North Star. So whenever I make something, I always think, would Gil like this? So I hope you guys enjoy this tonight. And without further ado, Mr. Shuler, please take over.
Dang, Marius, that's impressive. Are you sure you're talking about me, man?
Yeah, man.
No, we had a great time back in the day, man. My studio when Marius worked for me was right downtown on King Street, right across from the Omni, right beside the Old Town Greek restaurant. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it was like right in the midst of everything. And it was big time. And that was when we were really transitioning from computers, from doing mechanicals on the boards to computers and everything, putting it on that. But yeah, so I've been doing it a long time, basically, is what he said. You know, I think I opened my shop in '85. I graduated from college in '83 and opened my shop in '85. And I've been doing it ever since. I started out as a one-person shop. I grew to probably the most people I ever had was probably 6 or 7. And now I'm back to a one-person shop, which is awesome. I'm really digging it these days. So as far as tonight's presentation, I was gonna just kind of open up the floor for anybody to ask me any questions during the whole thing, but also kind of show you some work that I'm working on now that is not on my website or on my Instagram. And my Instagram handle is Sample the Dog. So if anybody wants to go there, and you can access my book on there too. So I guess I'll share my screen and show you guys some stuff, if that's cool. Okay, so I was going to start right here on my book. So this is the this is the InDesign document. I do a lot of books, and this is the InDesign document for, sorry, I gotta find my pages here so I can get back to the top. Come on. It's a lot of pages in this book. So I don't know if you guys do much page layout and all, but so this is the beginning of the book. And if you, you can't see that, but the cover that I showed you earlier, this is on the inside cover when you take the dust jacket off. And this Barn Jam book was I've been doing these Barn Jam posters for Eddie White at the Barn Jam, which is a music venue. And what Marius was talking about as far as music goes, I've done music work for musicians and for the Music Farm and for festivals for 35 years. And so I know a lot of musicians. I've always done that type of work. I always love that type of work. And so when Eddie started the Barn Jam and he asked me to, if I'd do a poster for it, I was like, dude, it was like right when the 2007, 2008, when the market crashed, the Great Recession. And so I was like, I need something to just stay busy and work on my chops and stay focused. I mean, we had you know, recession-proof clients, but I wanted to do this. So I started doing I did a poster a week since 2008. I think I got close to 700 now. And I post them on Instagram every Tuesday night. I do them every Tuesday night. And so after a while, people were saying, I want a book. Let's do a book. So I picked out in chronological order 200, basically 200 posters. And like I said, this is when you take the dust jacket off, this is the cover on the inside. And I decided to do this to show you guys the screen in the InDesign document, because if you're familiar with InDesign, I can access the, you know, I can open the original, and there might be an original that I want to open to show you guys. So that's why I did that. And like I said, you know, I not only do art and design posters and conceptual branding and logos and all that, but I also have designed a lot of books, and I really enjoy books. And so when you're looking at something like this, you're seeing, you know, the main cover, and then these extra pages that are like, this is like one title page, and then the next title page. And then we get into the text, and all of this text is just tells the story of the Barn Jam. And there's a photo of what it looks like out there on any given night pre-pandemic. they're still doing it now. They started it back in December, and you just have to wear a mask and do all the pandemic stuff. But singing, the worst thing, my wife's a musician, and the worst thing about this pandemic for musicians is if you sing, you're a super spreader. And so public singing has been just squashed, and, you know, people blowing on horns or any kind of music like that. It's just been tough on musicians. So if you have musician friends and you have extra money, please donate to anything there to help those guys out. So then this is some crap about me that Mark Sloan wrote. And then I kind of started the posters from where I started. They're chronological. It's only 200 out of 700, but they're chronological in when I started, not every one in a row. But I basically decided to start with like a jar, like a jam jar, like blueberry jams. And so I did a ton of these posters like this, where I would illustrate this jar and do a label with all the band on there. And then I started doing them in just different ways, ways that would make, you know, that were interesting. I'd find other jars and do them. I'd create my own as a guitar shaped jar, do my own type. Some congas that looked like jars. And then of course this mule I drew. I just had this idea one day and drew that mule. And then stuff like this, like these are just weird flowers that are made up of these real vector and gradated jars, you know, and it's just something interesting. And then I love to play with type. So I play with type like this. And then of course, this is supposedly a jar with it looking like an amp. And so I did these week after week after week. And this was a fun one. This one was actually picked up by a festival that used it. They paid me to use it a good many years ago, but, you know, just these little bugs in a jar, lightning in a bottle. I always tried to do something when it was around a festival time, a Christmas time. I love cats, so I'd do some cat stuff, and then just some crazy stuff. And so after a while, when you're doing, and then this one was, you know, it was like 100 degrees one day, and when we were doing this, I was like, well, it's crazy hot. And plus, you got to remember, and I know I'm just rambling, and if anybody wants to interrupt me and ask a question, feel free. I'm just sitting here in my shop talking to you guys. You know, busy with work. I got a lot of jobs. And at the end of the day, on Tuesday, I'm like, oh man, I got to do that Barn Jam poster. So I'll sit down, you know, everybody's gone home. And sometimes it's like, all right, I feel good about it. I'm going to just take my time and I have an idea and come up with it. Other times I'm like, shit, I'm exhausted. I just don't know what to do. And then I'll draw this little stupid guy and put some fire behind him. You know, it's that kind of thing. So some take a lot longer than others. Some I have ideas for, but anyway, just to kind of zoom forward, I did these jars for like years, for like 4 years or something like that. And then I kind of just got burnt out on the jars, and I started, you know, doing anything with the jars, whether it was you know, making a camper out of a jar, or making a mushroom and indicate that it is a jar, that you have to open it, you know, and then stupid dancing jar, and you know, tube of jam or whatever. And so as I did that, you know, after a while, after a few years of that, I'm just like, I don't know where to go with it. You know, it's starting to go to, you know, raccoons drinking beer, you know, and I even went, oh, this is an interesting one that I stuck in here just because a friend of mine, I've done a lot of work in Iceland. Since I've designed a lot of books, I've been over there a bunch of times because there's a printing plant over there that have printed a lot of books for me. So I'll go over there, and I've made a lot of friends. And this is a hardware store logo, sort of like that, in Iceland. And so I just tweaked it a little bit and made it like almost like a guitar here. And I couldn't not put it in this book because my Icelandic friends Odie and Ison printed my book, and they just loved this poster. So I was like, okay, I'll include that in there. So then it's like, maybe I should venture out. And so I'm playing around with sketches of a dog in a boat, head to the barn jam. And then, like you saw this shotgun shell wasn't really a jar. And then I would look at names of musicians. I started going, oh, shoot, who's playing? Maybe that'll give me an idea. And this one band was called Hick Child Soup. And I just love that name. And I thought, wow, what gasoline, that's Hick Child Soup. It's like, it's spelled out for me. So I had a lot of fun with that. And this is a good one to talk about a little bit. I wanted it to have this real rough feel, but I don't use filters. I don't use filters in Illustrator and I don't work in Photoshop. And so what I do is, like for this one, for instance, I'll draw each one of these different colored elements in Illustrator in black. That'll be a separate element. This whole dark brown piece, the handle, is a separate element. This red is separate. The yellow is separate. The shadow is separate. And then I'll explode them onto my pasteboard. And then I have all these filters. And this is the filters that I do have is basically, I got all, Marius mentioned, I have all these books. I have a ton of books. I love books. And I have some really old ones that I found in old printers places. And I'll go to the back of them where they're just been dirty and spots. And then I'll scan that or photograph that and then turn it to bitmap. And it'll just be this, say 11 by 17 sheet of dirt. And then I'll take that bitmap dirt and turn it to white and lay it on top of these black elements like this. And then open that up in Photoshop, that one document in Illustrator, open it up really big, change it to like 35 inches wide, and then adjust the blur just a little bit so those dots become a little more blurry and some disappear, and then I'll bitmap everything. And then I'll save that, and then I'll open up Illustrator and open that back up and drop it in there really big, and then do an auto trace, and then separate everything, and then put it all back together like that. And it's a lot of work, but it just creates these real original kind of feelings. And I'll do the same thing with the type, and if I want the type to have that feel. So that was a good one to talk about there for you guys. And so anyway, I kept going with the barn jam, and I started playing around with guitars and what they may look like. And so this is like a slide guitar, drew this finger, and then still playing with the jars some more. And so I started getting away from it and started leaning more toward guitars and instruments. And this was a barn jam on April 15th, tax day. So I just did that as a fun thing to think about it. And then of course, spaceship guitar, crazy cow, lightning bolts, crazy guitar monster, lighthouse guitar, frog, anything to do with music, and so as it goes through, you can see how it evolved. The snake, the thing about the barn jam is it's out in the woods. And so things like elements like snakes and goats, they have goats running around out there. I always like to play with them. Birds, because it's in the woods. This spider one guitar was for Halloween, October 30th. So there's always something to get your mind thinking about different ideas. So that's basically how I created this Barn Jam book. And like I said, it goes on forever. And I have it for sale on my website, which you can go to there and order one. It'd be great for your graphic design library.
So Gil, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
We could just unmute and ask if that's okay.
Oh yeah, please do. I feel like I'm talking to myself.
I know we actually, all the faculty know how that feels on here, so it's okay. So you mentioned that you graduated from college back in the early 80s, right? And so my question for you is, there've been a lot of changes to the design field in that time, right? We've seen the birth of UI, UX, we've seen interaction design, we've seen all sorts of changes to the field. But I'm wondering if there's anything that you've noticed that's evergreen, or that has not, some things that just have not changed in those 30 some odd years.
Clients, they haven't changed. They still want it yesterday. And good ideas, Meena, it's all about good ideas. That's one thing that hasn't changed. People still are looking for good, strong conceptual ideas, and they still notice it. There has been a little bit of a lean toward more stylized and stylistic design, but when it gets down to it, the one thing that has stayed true in graphic design, and I think if you look through new design annuals these days, as well as like Logo Lounge on Instagram, or Logo Inspirations, or any of those logo sites, not all of them, but good conceptual logos, good conceptual design still rings true and still stands out, as long as it's executed well. Now, you do have to execute it well, but I think that would be the one thing. My design, my business, and how I run my business has not really changed even before computers. I mean, I do the same thing I did back then: meet with the client, get the idea, get the assignment, get the brief, what they want, come up with ideas. I sketch a lot. I don't know. Can you guys see me? Are y'all can still see me? Yeah. So I sketch a whole lot, all the time, and with a pencil. But I also have an iPad with that I draw on too when I need to. But basically, clients are the same. They come up with what they want, and then you just try to please them. And that doesn't always work out, but we try hard for sure.
I have a follow-up.
Okay. Cool.
Sorry, and then I'll stop. So good ideas. I couldn't agree with you more. That's the thing, right, man? I mean, you could teach a student all day long the software, but what's going to happen in 6 months when brand new software comes out, and that old software is now old, right? So it's about the idea. So
yeah, that's just a tool.
Right.
Yeah.
My professor back when I was an undergrad, Robert McGank, who's up in Richmond, Virginia, great guy. He actually taught me how to use a matrix to come up with concepts and ideas to start to pinpoint things together. And there's some students in the audience right now who are smiling because they use it now too. Do you have any methods for getting those ideas that you use?
I have no idea what you're talking about, Meena, as far as a matrix goes, which is great. That's fine. When I was in school, my professor said, enable for us to understand concept, because first you have to understand what a concept is. What does that mean by coming up with a good idea? He said, you need to do at least 100 sketches for every idea. So when we had an assignment in school to design, say a brand for something, a logo for something, we would have to present him with 100 sketches. at least. And so I used to do that, but now I do that in my head. As far as coming up with an idea and how I generate that, it comes, there's no rhyme or reason for it for me. I try and play with visuals and look at visuals and generate a lot of stuff. And I'll do most of the work in my head these days. But, you know, sometimes you might come up with a great idea in your head for something, and then you put it down on paper, or even put it on paper and you like it, and then you transfer it to the screen to Illustrator or something, and it's like, yeah, that doesn't work. I can't. It looks like shit. I'm not going to do that. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I don't think there's a real. I would love to know what the matrix is, as far as how you come up with. If that can help me come up with more ideas, I want to know what it is. Yeah.
Well, you know, it's just like a subject, right? And then a method, or, you know, just putting things together, really, because you could fill it up with anything. It's just trying to cram two ideas together and see which one works.
Yeah, that's cool. And that's kind of what I do. I do a lot of that. And a lot of times it's also mistake. You know, I think you got to kind of free yourself up and have that as something to lean on to generate ideas, but you also need to free your mind and think really simple and go, you know, there's a simple solution to this. And it may be a situation where you just go straight to Illustrator and you pull up the ellipse tool and you have it set at a real wide stroke, and you know this is going to be a round logo or something to do with that, and then you make something with a real thick stroke, and then you accidentally drag something else on top of it and go, whoa, wait a minute, what does that look like? That looks kind of cool, you know? So I think it's a lot of thinking about it and the subject and the ideas, but then it's also a lot of just playing around and being loose and free. And it's so hard. It's easy for me to say that. And it's easy for me to talk about logos, like they're really easy to do, but they're, you know, it's tough. And you can come up, me and Marius were talking about yesterday, you can come up with just the most brilliant ideas and produce it and execute it brilliantly, and then send it to your client, and then they come back and go, yeah, not really feeling it, not really liking it. And that can just be a dagger to your heart, you know. But in this business, and I hope all you guys are listening, you got to have thick skin, and you cannot be a diva. You some people can, but you gotta have thick skin. And when somebody says, yeah, I don't like that, you know, I think you need to do something else. That's, you know, even though you might love it, you're gonna have to say, yeah, okay, all right, I see. I'll come up with something else, you know. And I hate that. I'll show you something real quick that I have back here hidden. You guys can still see my screen. So this was a project that nobody's ever seen this but you guys, okay? And the client. So this was a client that was doing hand forged stuff, and he wanted me to do the branding for him. This was this past year. The branding is finished, but it doesn't look anything like this, because this was the first presentation I came up with for him, and he hated it. He was like, yeah, don't like it. And so I wrote this copy about working by hand. It's all based on his mission statement that we developed. And I had this idea in my head with this anvil and this hammer, and it being a hand, because it was all about hand done. And then I did this forged type right here. This just did, and you guys know how to do good hand lettering and scripts and things like that. It's just super labor intensive. and I'll back up on this thing, and you'll see how much work I put into these things. Okay. So I may start on a script like this, where it's a thick and thin, and I'm playing with it, and I'm drawing it, and then I'll fine tune that, and then go, I hate it, and then do something completely different. But that's neither here nor there. So I put together this whole presentation for him, and was real excited about it because it seemed really fresh and interesting. You know, everything from stationary to be kind of letterpressed. I was going to find some real old interesting paper and do all of that, to packaging, how we would package everything up, what the tissue would look like with these lightning bolts on there, and how the hang tags might work, even to the website, how the front page of the website. I mean, I went far beyond, and I always do this, you know, how we might sell stuff on there, how it might look. And I love one color silkscreen shirts and all this. So I sent him this, and he was like, yeah, don't like it. Don't like it at all. Looks dumb. And I was like, okay, man. So don't get discouraged when shit like that happens. But you talk to any designer, and it happens all the time. And since then, you know, I know this guy, and he's a friend of mine. And I probably have done 3 presentations since this one. And I finally got something that was approved. And I was telling Marius the other day that a lot of times you overthink the problem. And they just want something really simple. And that's another thing too, you need to ask good questions. And maybe that was a problem I didn't do. And specific questions, and what do you like? And I do all of that, but then I get something in my head, and I'm like, this is going to be a good idea. He's going to like this. It's neither here nor there. But so we ended up with a solution. He actually approved it today, and it's, whenever you see it, you'll go, really? Okay. You know, but as long as the check clears and nobody gets hurt, it's all good, you know. But it's a cool, simple mark, and nothing like this one. But this one will never see the light of day, you know. And it's kind of disappointing. Oh, I think I have some miscellaneous stuff here. So I like playing around, and this is like screwing around with anvils. And I was stacking an anvil on top of an anvil. There's an old, and that's another thing I think about. There's an old John Prine song where he sings about his father or somebody, and he said he was such a good carpenter, he put a level on a level. And I was thinking about that when I was working on this. I was like, what if you put an anvil on an anvil? And, you know, so it was kind of making an F. It was kind of a tough sell, you know, but I liked it. And then this was just like something I was playing around with lightning bolts, and I just moved some things on top of things on the computer, and I was like, it's kind of a cool mark. I'll send that to, and so I'll do that a lot, is I'll add some shit at the end just in case they hated everything. But you know, this guy, he hated everything, even the ones at the end. So, but that happens. It's no big deal.
Hey Gil, do you ever like recycle anything? Like, you know, you ever get another forged project? Will this come back up, or do you completely trash it? And, or do you ever enter the work that the client didn't pick into annuals or any of that kind of stuff, so that it still does have a life to it?
Oh yeah, I'll recycle stuff for sure. I have files and files and files of art that has never seen the light of day. And if I'm working on a project and I'm thinking, oh crap, man, you know, I did something that related to this, and I'll go back. I got hard drives. I'll find it. pull it up and look at it and see if it applies. And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. But, you know, I don't submit to annuals anymore. I quit submitting designs to CA and to print 10 years ago, probably. Maybe not that long ago, maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And the main reason for that was I got in print magazine 25 years in a row. And then it got super thin. That regional design annual went like from being really thick to really, really thin. And I was just like, screw this thing. I'm not doing that because it costs a lot of money. And then CA, you know, I was published in CA for 3 or 4 times. And like Marius said, judged that show. And it was just so expensive. It just got so expensive and a real pain in the butt to do the whole thing. So I quit submitting anything. But if I was submitting stuff now, I would probably submit stuff like this. I would submit stuff that's not published, which is not really right. And I'm sure that a lot of that shit you see in design annuals are not published stuff. And that's been going on forever. I remember back in the 90s, there was like a friend of mine worked for GSD&M in Austin, big ad agency. And they had producers there and writers that would make spec commercials, you know, that the client would never approve, but they would go ahead and produce these spec TV commercials and then just to send in to CA and get them selected in there. And then they would get better jobs from that. But that's not really right to do that, but it happens.
Hey, Gil, I got a question for you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So can you zoom out on that artboard again? So we can like see all the whole thing. All right. So my question for you is, when you are like, you're presenting this to the client, did he hire you to do what? Like, so you're showing t-shirt designs and hat designs and stuff. You're not actually, you're just kind of showing him how it could look, but you're not actually pricing out t-shirts and hats and stuff for him. Or you just,
no, on this job, I was strictly hired to come up with a logo and possibly a secondary logo, as in a secondary script, primary logo, secondary logo, stationary package. And really that was it. And then art direction on the website. I had a more comprehensive proposal, Marius, but they didn't want to pay all of that. So it was a little bit smaller, but I tend to go way past that when I'm working on a project like this. And one of the reasons is to show the t-shirts and to show the hats and to show stickers and anything like this and packaging. It just gives them a better idea of what the logo can look like. You throw one on a hat, you know,
yeah.
And for some reason, you can show it on the computer, you can show it on a business card, but you throw it on a hat and they go, oh man, I like that. You know, it's so weird. And I've talked to Aaron Draplin about that too. We've talked about that a ton. Yeah, it's like, yeah, a client didn't like it till he saw it on a hat, you know.
I feel a hat project coming on, Gil. That's a good idea.
But yeah, so I do all this. I'll find these photos, these stock photos, and throw them on there and play around with colors. Oh, the other thing was like, and for you students to understand that when you're doing a logo project, really the way I used to do it, I only showed them stuff in black and white. When I made presentations to begin with, it was like, I'm only showing it to you in black and white. If it works in black and white, it'll work in any color. And that was the whole concept. And then, you know, computers came about, and then you could make everything in color, and you can do that. And colors will, excuse my language, will fuck people up. Colors will mess people up. It'll blow their mind. They can't see anything else with the color. And with this guy that I didn't realize, he's like, oh man. And that was one of the reasons where I was like, okay, cool. I'll completely not even try to sell you on this. Is he was like, that looks so Russian. It looks so Russian. That hand, the red, the brown, you know. And I was like, yeah. Okay, I get it. No worries. I don't think Russian's bad. I don't think red. My favorite colors are red, black, and yellow. So I tend to put everything in red when it comes to design, in red, black, and yellow anyway. Yeah, so there's a lot of little nuances.
I think you should start Gil, I think you should start a band called Forged, and then you'd be set.
Right, that's cool. Except I think my latest band name was Bullet Gun or something like that. Oh, there was another one I told Marius I was gonna show you guys. This is a project. This is another pasteboard. And just so you guys know, you guys work in Illustrator. I start with one pasteboard, one 11 by 17 pasteboard like this. And I'll start with that, and it'll be completely white. And I will have done sketches, and then I'll start working on that. And then I just, you know, drag and make another one and make another one and make another one and keep doing that. But this is a project that I just had approved, and I'm doing some tweaking on it for this outfitter in Alpharetta, Georgia. And so this was one where we were going to do multiple primary logos, and it was all about fish. It's all about fly fishing. And I don't know if I have their original stuff in here. Doesn't look anything like this, but anyway. So this was round 2, and I developed the colors that I liked. And then I had to do a rainbow trout, which is what this is, but it's just a one color. And I developed this script. I looked at Alpharetta and really thought, you know, that's a long word. It could look really good as a script. And I like to do same thickness scripts. And it just made sense with Alpharetta Outfitters to be in a script. But then we'll do secondary lockups like this. And I use this keystone shape because, you know, I fish a lot. I'm an outdoors guy. I do a lot of fly fishing and things like that. And so for some reason, these fly fishermen like me, they just love hats and round logos on hats and shapes like this. And so you got to think about those people too, you know, people like me. Anyway, I started with this A like this. And after presenting the first round to the client, he was like, you know, that's kind of a wimpy A. These were kind of my first foray playing around with it. And it's like, I want a stronger A. And so that's when I went for the second presentation and went to this real capital A instead of a large lowercase a. And then I try and do these when I illustrate fish and different things like that. I try and do those to where they can be embroidered, you know, can be reduced down really small, and still be readable and still be really cool. So this one was a real interesting one because they wanted this rainbow trout. They wanted this brown. This is a brown trout. Tarpon, saltwater fish. And if I'm making you guys sick by moving my screen around, sorry. It's just going to be the way it is. Striped bass. And then, you know, playing around with some lettering. We're going to, you know, some just lockups like this for different usage. And they have a dog that has one eye. That's like the mascot of their shop. So I illustrated this guy, and this is going to be on their boats and things like that. And then the other thing I wanted to create was a pattern and base it on an A. And this is, your basic A shape. And so I did these thick line, consecutive line patterns with, this is a redfish tail, which is saltwater fish. This is a saltwater tarpon tail. This is a brown trout tail. This is a rainbow trout tail. So I focused on those three and then create this pattern. And that's going to be printed on buffs and things like that. And it's just a real strong secondary logo. And then these are all secondaries and tertiaries based on that. And then, this is one of those ideas that they do a bugs and suds. Okay, this is fishermen for you. They have parties and they have this event that's called bugs and suds. And bugs are, of course, flies that we fish with. They're tied to look like bugs. And then they have this beer party. And so I was like, he's like, we need a logo for that. And I was like, well, that's easy, man. Freaking hop, a beer hop made into a fly. And so that was one of the easy ideas. And then it's just executing it so it looks right, works right. And so I moved that AO over there. I'll play with that, but that's a good visual of an idea. And then I like to do this stuff all separate, so it's not tied in. It's its own type. If it needs to be its own type, so it can be on shirts and things like that, and boats by itself, like this. And so I wanted to show you guys this project because, and this was from the first presentation where I just threw all these things on shirts. And a lot of times I won't do this and on hats because it's real labor intensive, but it gives them an idea of how they can use the work. And I think that's real important for clients when you're doing a large branding package like this, and you're giving them a lot of stuff to look at. And then they might go, I love it all, prepare the logo files, send them to me. But if you don't, when I'm showing them stuff on shirts like this, it's the way I want to see them printed on shirts, and it gives them ideas of ways to do that. And then you just hand it over and hope they produce the stuff really good. Now, even though I'm really proud of this job, I think it's a fun job, and I got some tweaking to do. Don't get me wrong, I got a good bit of tweaking to do and finalize it. Then I got to prepare logo files. And I don't know if you guys do that in class, but that's we use asset export. I don't know if you use asset export in Illustrator, but basically I have to, each logo, like this is a detail nobody tells you about. So say this page, he wants this horizontal logo in these two colors. He wants this keystone shaped logo in these three colors, this one in three colors, and this one in one color, and this one in one color. So each of these, I save 7 different ways into a logo file, and I'll save it in Illustrator in EPS.ai and an SVG, and then I'll asset export it, drag it in asset export, which immediately makes 4 more files, PNG, and then a ×3 PNG, and then a JPEG and a ×3 JPEG. And so it gives them everything for print production, for web production, and anything else they can think of. But you have to be so organized to organize these logo files. And the other thing about it, and it takes a lot of time, because you want to make sure the logo is perfect. You want to make sure everything's outlined. You outline, you path everything. Got to make sure the PMS colors are right. Everything fits perfectly. Then you got to name it. And so then you got a file that says Alpharetta Outfitter AO logo files. And then inside those logo files, I'll have Rainbow Trout folder logo files. And then inside that logo file, I'll have Rainbow Trout, AO, Rainbow Trout, horizontal, 3 colors, PMS this, 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 and this. and then save it 7 ways in there. And then I'll create another one that says AO, horizontal logo, 1 color or 1 PMS, save that way, and then save it 7 ways. And then that goes on. So out of this one page, 7 times 5, there'll be 35 different saved, 35 files, 35 documents within 7 files. And then if any of these, they want in just red or whatever, then that's a whole other set. So then you create these just tons of logo files. Well, that's at least a day, probably 2 or 3 days to create all of that. But I can't stress that enough, because when the clients get these things, they're set. All they have to do is, if they get an embroiderer company to make a hat company making hats, or a shirt company or a buff company, all they have to do is go in that file, follow it really clearly, click on it, send it to the vendor, and the vendor's got everything they need. But that takes work, and that's not fun work.
Gil, let me ask you this question to kind of, you're getting into some really interesting stuff. I wish we had like another hour to talk about just this. But we want to open up for some student questions. I will ask you though, how much time do you think you spent on this whole project, this whole body of work we're looking at here, even including the things like you're just talking about now, the production stuff at the end?
I work pretty fast. I work a lot faster than a lot of people, but I would probably say the total amount of time from concept to where I am now, and I probably have a full 10 more hours to spend. That's like 10 hours of grinding on the computer. I probably have another good 10 hours to finish the job. I've probably spent 50 or 60 hours on it. And I work fast.
Yeah.
And that might boil down to 5 days in a row where I'm working on nothing but this.
Right.
It's not always like that. This is a complicated project because it involves a lot of illustration, involves the hand lettering, and just a lot of different logo lockups.
Yeah.
But, from talking to other friends of mine that are designers that work on projects like this, it's not unusual for one project like this for them to, if you counted consecutive days, to spend 8-10 hours a day, 20 days straight, to get it perfect. And I tell you that a third of the time or a quarter of the time is spent preparing all the files to give them. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Well, let's let's open it up to any student questions, because we value your time and we want to make sure that you can get out of here at a reasonable time tonight. So, do we have any student questions? Do we want to turn off the screen sharing and let Gil see us, and we can also do a group
let me do that.
Group portrait at the end there.
Let me turn off this thing. Where is it? Where are you at?
That's just either at the very top.
Oh yeah, stop share. There it is. Stop share. My bad. Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, you're good now. Okay, cool. So let's open it up for any student questions. Anybody got anything they want to know?
So did you design the logo for the Charleston River Dogs?
I did. Yes, I
Valdes
did.
Talking about that.
Yeah, Marius came up with that name.
Yeah.
He came up with that name, and there's a whole story about that thing.
Yeah, where's his boat? I thought he was supposed to get a boat.
That's right.
Yeah, well, he didn't submit it. He didn't submit it because we were like, I don't know if you can submit it because we're involved in it. And
I'm still waiting on my thank you letter from Bill Murray. If you could just make that happen, that would be the perfect bookend to that story.
I don't know if you saw Bill Murray was in that golf tournament last week, and they interviewed him, and he was wearing original classic River Dogs hat
Oh,
with
really?
the logo on there. Yeah, I thought about you, Marius. I was like, check it out, Bill Murray. No, that was a fun project, and it was great that Marius was working with me then. It's fun.
I consider that my big claim to fame in Charleston. But
I tell that story a lot. That's a great story. Because that was a PR nightmare, man. PR firms should learn about that, because they were like, yeah, we're not going to pull a name out of the hat because we already picked a name. And everybody was like, what? It was bad. That's okay.
I'll tell everybody the story at another time. It's a good one.
Yeah, tell them again.
I've told a couple of people that story, but anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I got one. So like, when it comes to doing like projects and stuff, are there any sort of projects that you've done that you weren't doing for any companies? You decided that I'm gonna just do this for fun because I'm sort of in that creative mind, or I'm in that sort of creative energy, and just sort of like create this for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was actually thinking about something on that today. I need to do some new hats for myself, and I was thinking about that. But there was this party I used to throw with some friends of mine called the Dog Party, and that's why my Instagram handle is Sample the Dog. And so every year we'd throw this party because I do work for bands, and I'd trade out and they would play the gig. And so I would come up with this invitation and all these shirts and hats, and we'd sell them and pay for the party. And so that was always fun. I'd write this crazy narrative and produce this art. But yeah, I think that's one of the best things you can do to refresh your mind, is do something for yourself that nobody else, you don't care, it's just for you. I think that's a great exercise. And that's what that barn jam basically is for me, because nobody has to prove that. I could shit on a piece of paper and throw it up there, and Eddie would put it out there, Sorry, I'm pretty crude, rude, and socially unattractive, but that's just me. Yeah, do work for yourself, man. It's fun. That's when it gets fun.
I had one of those T-shirts from the Dog Party, the one with Tongue the Frog.
Oh yeah.
And I'm telling you, Gil, that was like I wore that shirt until it like literally disintegrated, because it just fit perfectly. I don't know why I like the design on it, but
I think I have some Tongue to Frogs here, man. I might have one for you, Marius. Check your mail in the next few days, man. Okay. I'll dig it up.
Okay, I will wear that. Anybody else got questions? I got a question. Maybe someone can think of one while I'm asking this one. I know you paint and you play music and you fish a lot. How do you feel like that plays into your creative process? And how do you think that, we have students who we're actually in the studio art program. So we have people who do, fine art. Do you think that's helped you with your own design work?
Yeah, I think being well-rounded is good, and doing fine art is a way to get away from all these vectors. You're working in vectors all the time. You're working on simple marks. Sometimes you just want to just do something really loose, and you might have an idea and play around with some paint, get your hands dirty, and make something. It's all about making something. So I think making something is really healthy. And the idea of playing music is just kind of a release more than anything, I think that stimulates just your mind, and just releasing and letting it go, and getting away from the day-to-day, because our work and what you guys are learning to do in graphic design is a great field, and it's very rewarding and creative, but it will sitting in front of that computer all day long and dealing with tedious, detailed stuff. You need some outlet, and getting out on the boat and throwing the fly and being out in the weather, or sitting in my garage, cranking up the amp, playing the guitar, just whatever. It all comes back to you then sit down at the computer and you're like, yeah, all right, I'm ready to design some stupid mark for somebody's business. Just kidding.
It's okay.
None of them are stupid.
No, not at all. But you know,
No.
speaking of those clients, Mitchell has a question in the chat, and I want to make sure to ask it for the students. So Mitchell, I'm going to ask your question here. How do you go about finding opportunities to work with companies that fit your style? Do you reach out to them, or do they come to you?
Well, you know, I've been doing this for millennia, so I've been lucky. Most of the clients have come to me, word of mouth and my reputation and just having the experience, you know, and so I've been lucky in that way most of the time. I really don't pursue much work. And the only way I advertise these days is just on my Instagram, just posting stuff on Instagram and hope people see it, you know. And I don't have many followers on Instagram, so I don't know if I only have I don't even know if I have 3,000 on there, probably something like that. But no, it's mainly just word of mouth. And I think that's a good point, that if you do good work and you work really hard on it, and you're flexible with clients to make them happy, and they know, I never burn any bridges. You know, the client can be the worst client in the world, and at the end of the day, I'll make them happy in some way. You know, now don't get me wrong, I don't work for assholes. Okay, life's too short to work for assholes, so I don't do that. But I've done plenty. I've worked for plenty of them, but not anymore. I hope that answered the question, Meena. Yeah, there it is.
He said it does. It does. Thank you. He said.
Okay, good.
All right, I got one last question. If anyone is there any other questions? Anybody? All right, and I know we could spend a whole hour talking about this, but Gil, you came a couple years ago to when I used to teach at USC Upstate. I brought you up, and the whole topic was about, you know, when students are graduating looking for a job, and you gave a great talk about, you know, just a couple of small pointers. I know people hit you up all the time and say, "Hey, will you look at my portfolio?" In today's day and age, how does that work for you now? Are you still taking time to look at portfolios? Do you want to see PDFs? Do you want people to come see you in person? I mean, obviously not during COVID. What are some things our students who are looking for jobs in May? What's like, you know, just a quick couple minute, you know, pep talk here for them?
Well, the first thing to do is get your portfolio together. Make sure your portfolio is tight. Show it to your professors. Have about 12 items in there. Start with your best, end with your best. And then when you reach out to folks like me and other design studios and stuff, number one, make sure you spell their name correctly when you email them. Do some research on them. If I get an email from somebody wanting me to look at their portfolio and my name is misspelled, I delete it. I don't even reply to it, because we're in the business of spelling shit right, you know, of getting it right. We're in the communications business, so do that. And then I look at books all the time. I mean, pre-pandemic for sure, but I love for kids to call me up and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. Do you have a job?" And I'll say, "No, you know, I won't now," but I'll say, "Yeah, maybe," or "No, I don't have a job, but come see me and let me look at your book." And then I'll let them do their whole presentation in their portfolio, whether it's on an iPad or it's printed or whatever it is, doesn't matter to me. And then I'll critique their book and tell them, you know, what they need to do, what they should put up there. Or I might say, "It's great, it's perfect. I'll give people other contacts of people I know that might be looking for a designer or somebody like that. But the real key is the other thing is, this is a little detail like spelling people's names right. Don't ever leave a message that says, would you please call me back? Leave a message. If you call them on the phone, leave a message that says, I want to meet with you, show my portfolio, blah, blah, blah. I'll call you back. This is who I am. And then call them back and follow up. Same with emails. Don't say, would you please let me know? You be proactive, because we're all busy, and I can't stress enough the proofing of your emails to potential business owners and things like that. And then when you come in to present your book to somebody like me, don't be nervous and be prepared and dress decent. I mean, I don't give a shit how you dress, but you know what I'm saying. Just don't come in there like you don't care. I mean, you want to show them that you care and that you care about design, because the people you're talking to, like me, I mean, that's our whole livelihood, and you want to show that you are in the club, man. I'm in your club. And that's what you want to do.
I'll end this up with another quick story, like I began with this. But when I got that internship with Gil, I went to Catholic high school my whole life, or Catholic school my whole life, and so my hair always had to be short and off my collar. And the summer before I went to work with Gil, I grew my hair for the whole year, and it was the longest it had ever been. And my mom was like, "You better get your hair cut before you go work with Gil." And I walked in on the first day, and he goes, "What'd you cut your hair for, man?" I was like, "Oh, my mom said I should go." And she was like, "You don't have to do that." And I was like, "Oh." So
yeah. Just make sure it's clean, man. That's all.
Yeah. Well, listen, Gil, thank you for taking time to do this. And I should also mention that Gil has generously, we usually pay our speakers some money, and Gil has asked us to donate that back to get another speaker. So thank you, Gil, for truly donating your time tonight. And I would really recommend you pick up his book. It's always good to have a nice design book. And I always tell my students, I wouldn't make you buy a book that you don't want to keep. And I think that's a keeper. Yeah. One last thing. I need everybody to turn their cameras on so we can take a group portrait real quick. We did this last time. I think it's a good tradition. So
they're not really there, Marius.
I know they're all like eating dinner, TV.
Oh, look at these people. They are here.
They are real.
They're real.
They exist.
Oh, man. Oh, it's good to see y'all. All right. Are we ready?
All right. Last call. 3, 2, 1. Cheese.